So today I want to tell the story of what I mean when I say quiet resolve. Now, I've told parts of these stories here before on this channel, but considering that yesterday I changed the name of the channel to Quiet Resolve, I'd like to explain why I did that and what exactly I mean. Now, the first part to this story was one of the most important lessons that men can learn many times. This happened really early on. I was 21 years old and I had just gotten out of the military and I was in a position of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I actually made a somewhat tepid decision. I decided I wanted to try becoming a real estate agent. I hadn't done a ton of research on it, but I'd done enough to know, hey, I'm personable. People seem to get along with me when I'm around. I'm young. I think I can put some energy into this. And so I made the decision to do that. And then I made the mistake of telling my mother. And since I was still young and impressionable and really didn't have that much of an idea of what being a real estate agent would entail, I let her talk me out of it. And it wasn't all that difficult. She just told me how hard it was going to be, how difficult it would be, how the first couple of years I'm not likely to make any money. It's really hard. It's really hard. You get the idea. And I put that idea aside and I never visited it again. But that was the first time that I started to learn a lesson that took me a few times to learn of if you're going to share your dreams, hopes, aspirations with people, make sure you've vetted them already and they're not just going to be negative about it. Make sure that you're not telling your secrets to somebody who's going to say, well, are you sure? Are you positive? It's really going to be hard. That was a lesson I needed to learn, and it took me a while to get it through my thick head, but eventually I did. Now, fast forward, this is the part that really nails down the quiet resolve part. Fast forward till I believe I would have been 27, 28 years old. And we had just moved. When I say we, me and my ex wife and my oldest son, Kyle, who was an infant at that time, we had just moved to Virginia. And I ended up working as a butcher's assistant. I got a job as a butcher's assistant at one of the local grocery stores. Didn't really have much in the way of experience. I had been a cook in the military, but I didn't really prepare meat. So, long story short, is my first day, right? I'm there, I'm on time and everything. And the guy who was supposed to be training me comes in and he is disheveled, distraught. He's an emotional wreck. And what had happened was his dog had either a heart attack or a stroke. His dog was very sick. And because he had to be at work and couldn't afford to take any time off, and his wife had to be at work and couldn't take any time off. Because of that, as he said, my dog's just outside in his doghouse and he's probably going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. And in that moment, what my goal for my life became just instantly happened. Now, I had two dogs at that time. I basically had dogs my entire adult life. Seeing him be so utterly helpless, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't have any way to be able to he didn't have any family close to watch the dog. The dog literally had to be outside in its doghouse suffering from whatever ailment he had. And in that moment, the thing that struck me, the quiet resolve, if you will, what struck me is I'm never going to allow myself to be in this position. Whatever I have to do to make sure that this particular set of circumstances never crosses my path, if I can help it, that's what I'm going to do. I quietly resolved to make sure that no matter what, I would be able to work from home. I would be able to be home with my kids, my dogs. I would always be able to have the time to give them in the important moments. And of course, I added in a couple of things there of I want to make sure I've got a big house right by the water so that I can take my dogs to the river or to the beach and play. And I'm always there with them, especially, most importantly, as they get older in age and in their last moments. I quietly resolved for that to be what my life became. Now, here's the thing, I never told anybody. Now, I've spoken about it to the people that were in my life after I had achieved it, but I never spoke it out loud to anybody but myself, because you can see where somebody would be like, are you sure you're going to be able to, maybe you'd just be better off getting a job and making sure you work different shifts as your spouse. And you can see how somebody would say, especially in my position at that point with an infant child at home and just renting a house, you can see how somebody would easily have tried to tell me how hard it was and to maybe mitigate and change and lower my expectations. But no, I had resolved that this was going to be the way it was. Now, the second part to that is the next day when the man did come back into work, his dog had died. His dog had died while he was at work the previous day. And so that cinched it. That clinched it for me. There was just no way I was going to be put into a position like that where I would not be able to be there with my animal and just completely unable to tend to them. And so I was 27 when that happened, 27, 28. And let me see, I've been in this house 11 years, 44. So I'll be 55 in a couple weeks. So it took me to the age of 44 to be able to achieve the entire thing. Now, it wasn't long after that episode as the butcher's apprentice. I left that job after those 2 days. It wasn't long after that where I found eBay and started being self-employed, staying at home. But it took me to the age of 44 to have completed the package, having never told anybody. And in fact, I didn't even tell anybody when I had achieved the goal. When I had the house and we were here and I was home with everybody and the river's right there, I still didn't tell anybody, because to me at that point, this was just for lack of a better phrase, maybe you say it was just a deal I made with myself or a deal I made with God, however you want to put it, where I kept it to myself. I said, you know what? Because there's a lot of things that I went through, not only to achieve that, but to keep it. And if the people around me knew what I was doing to achieve my goal, maybe they would have tried to help, but also maybe they would have tried to tell me, hey, maybe this goal is a little bit too high for you. Maybe you should lower your goal. Maybe you should mitigate things. Make it a little bit easier on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. I never did any of that. Again, I quietly resolved to handle my business internally to me, and it took a lot. It took a lot to make it happen, a lot of sacrifice to make it happen, a lot of sacrifice to continue to keep being able to be at home and have that time. And it couldn't have worked out any better than it absolutely did. I ended up getting everything that I wanted, including being able to be home and not worry about money when both of my dogs passed away over the course of 4 months and I was there for them. Didn't have to worry about it. All right. Everything was taken care of. And so what's the lesson here? Well, there's a couple of things. Like I said early on, it's not the best. The best advice that I can give you is to be very, very conservative with who you tell any of your plans to. Now, and I hate to put it this way, but usually it's especially don't tell the women in your life. Don't tell your wife. Don't tell your girlfriend. Don't tell your mother. And not because there's any nefarious intent behind them, but many times they will not want you to struggle, right? They may want you to try to take the easier path. But if you don't want to be misguided and you don't want to be convinced that maybe your goals and aspirations are too high, you tell your brother, or maybe you tell your father, right? Because your brother or your father is going to understand that as a man, you've set this goal and it's really become a non-negotiable. For a man to give up on his goal and change it or lower it, most of the time we are going to feel like we failed. And while we struggle trying to achieve it, trying to maintain it, some of the people around us, they may not understand, well, why are you so frustrated? From the outside, it looks like things are good for you. What's the frustration? Why do you seem so distant or so, being hard on yourself, as though there's a shortcoming that only we can see, but those on the outside cannot see? So, while obviously for for a good relationship, I do recommend having a good open line of communication. Countless times over and over again in my previous relationships, I have learned that, hey, I've got this idea, whether it would be for a video or a book I wanted to write or a story or something I might do. And I would be consistently ended up getting discouraged by the women in my life, and not intentionally. Now, sometimes they may say, hey, that's not a good idea or whatever. But sometimes you get, as a man, will just get so excited for this idea. And then you tell your wife, you tell your girlfriend, you tell your mom, and they want to tweak it. They want to change it. And many times, like I said, it's not nefarious intent. They're not trying to get you to do things differently necessarily as a way to get you to not do them. Most of the time, especially if it's your mom, right? They're genuinely just wanting to help and wanting you to have a good life and to be happy. But they will say things that unintentionally might shift your view or might, take your excitement level down a couple of notches. So that's why yesterday, when I was thinking about I wanted to rebrand this channel, I don't want this channel to get stuck on the one note. I don't want it to just seem like every video is complaining about women. I'm looking for a more balanced approach that can help men. And, if women want to watch the videos, the name of the channel had been exclusively male. That kind of tells women not to watch, right? So I wanted something a little bit more broad, a little bit that would reach a few more people. And so with a lot of work yesterday, I got to the point about quiet resolve. And then it hit me. Well, that's my whole story. The whole house and my whole life of being at home and everything, I learned I had to quietly resolve to take on my own tasks, to take on my own goals. And that's how I achieved it. And I do credit not telling anybody. And in fact, to say, I didn't even tell my brother or my father. I told nobody. If you want to say, it shouldn't be a this, that, or the other thing, it shouldn't be a, well, only tell the man, not tell the woman, that's fine. I didn't tell anybody. I told nobody, not a soul. And the only time I talked about it was when things were really rough, and I would go outside and talk to God about it and just walk around and make sure that the powers that be knew that no, whatever I had to deal with, whatever was going to come my way, whatever I had to deal with, to put up with, to make sure that I achieved my goal that I wanted, that's what I was willing to do. There was nobody there to make it easier on me. There was nobody there to try to talk me into lowering my goal. It was just me and myself, and the resilience of saying, all the different ways that things could have been a little bit easier, could have taken it, better on myself, could have made a tweak here, tweak there. No, I had my goal. I quietly resolved to achieve that goal, and I credit the achievement of that goal with having just told absolutely nobody.